Hello guys, it's Pakman here, and today I will show you how to make this radio app. Let's go! So let's start with empty project, and for now we have only home screen, which is just empty project, and we can run it. So as you can see, it's just empty white background. So first of all we'll create a gradient, and to do that we'll create a special widget for that. Let's put it in widgets folder, and let's name it gradient background. Let it be stateless widget with name gradient background, and let it be container with height double.infinity, which means take as much space as possible, and with double infinity as well, which basically will mean that the container will take whole space of the phone screen. And now let's add a child, and as a child it will be an argument of a constructor. So let's put our child widget in a constructor, and let's put it in our container. We need to add gradient, and to add gradient we need to add box decoration, and in box decoration we need to specify gradient property. It will be linear gradient, and for colors let's just put purple and pink. Let's specify a begin and end alignment. Let it start from bottom left and let it end at top right. Let's save it, and let's add this gradient background to our home screen. Let's put it in body. As child, let's just put a container, save it, and as we can see we have nice background. And now we will create a UI. We'll create UI in a separate widget as well. So let's create our radio player in a separate widget. Let it be stateful widget, because we will have some changing states in that widget. Let's name it radio player. And for now, let's just create a column with main axis alignment center. And for our children, let's make expanded for our album cover and our stop, play, list, and mute sound buttons. For a child, let it be a column, and children for this column first of all will be our album cover, and for that it will be basically container with height of 200 and width of 200, and let's assign a color just to see it. Colors with amber, and let's assign our radio player to our home screen, to our gradient background, and of course let's assign our column to main axis alignment center. After our container we can add row with our buttons, so let's just add row. For main axis alignment, let's just add main axis alignment space even, and as our children let's add our icon buttons. So first of all, let's add a button that will open up a list of our radio stations. For now, let's be empty function for onPress property, and for icon it will be icon widget with icons.list. Let's just change the size of our icon to be somewhere like 30. What we can do, we can change the color of our icon to be colors.white. Let's just add our play icon and our mute volume icon. So for playing, let's just put play hour icon, and as the last icon in our row, let's just put our icon for muting sound, so it will be volume up button. Of course, if the button will be clicked, it needs to be changed to muted volume icon. And after our expanded widget, we need to create our radio list, and let it be our container with 300 pixels height and double infinity width, so the screen width. Let's make this container to have border radius on top. To do that, let's just create box decoration, and first of all let's create color, and we can create some transparency white. For that, let it be 54, and let's create border radius, so it will be border radius vertical, and we need to align the top radius, and it will be radius circular, and let's put 50 here, or maybe 40. Yeah, it looks quite good. Let's just make it constant, and we can create our charts there. which will be of course column, and the column children will be the title of our radio list, which will be text, and it will be called radio list. Of course, let's make it bigger, let's make it 30, and let's make also the font weight to be bold. Maybe it's a little bit too big, let's make it 20, or maybe 24, and let's make some padding to that text to be not on the edge of the container. Let's add divider. Let's make the color to be colors black, and let's add some indents to be, let's say, 20 or maybe 30. And our last widget will be list of our radio stations, which we will create soon. Of course, this will be internet radio stations, and we need to create some test data, but before that we need to create model for our radio station. So let's create model folder. Let's create radio station model. Let's name it radio station, and we will need name of our station, stream URL, and also photo URL of our station cover. Let's create a constructor for that, and let's create our data of radio stations. Let's name it radio stations. It will be class radio stations, and we'll have one static property which will be a list of radio station. Let's name it all stations. As you can see, I have added some radio stations, and you can find those radio stations, for example, by going to streamurl.link, and you can, for example, type BBC, and you should have some BBC radio stations. So we have our radio stations. So now what we need to do, we need to create our radio list, which will be in our list of radio stations in our main screen. So we can add it as the last widget, and it will be called radio list widget. Of course, we need to create it, so let's just create a file, radio list.dart file. Let it be stateless widget, name the radio list, and we will listview builder widget. So let's assign our item builder and assign our item count, which will be radio stations dot all stations dot length. And now we can find single radio station by its index, and we can return our list style, and leading widget will be image network, and as source it will take our station the photo URL. Let's make it width to be 50 and height to be 50. Let's make fit to be box fit cover. Let's add missing library to our radio player, and we need to also wrap our radio list with expanded, because our list view builder needs to know what's the boundary of its parent. Yeah, and as we can see, the icons of our radio stations are rendered. So we can create our title widget now, and for title it will be basically text widget, and it will be our station name, and we have a nice name of radio stations that are in our test data. Maybe this image is a little bit big, let's make it 40, and let's change our horizontal title gap, and let's make it 50. It looks quite good. So now let's make our list to disappear and only appear when we click our list icon button. We would like to have it in some kind of animation, so that our list does not disappear suddenly or not appear suddenly, but it's let's say sliding from down to up. And to do that, well, first of all, let's assign our click action to our widget, and let's change the color whenever this button is clicked. And to do that, let's go back to our radio player. So let's make our list enabled boolean property to be false. Whenever the list icon is clicked, we set state and assign the opposite of list enabled. And whenever list enabled is true, we want to have colors amber color of our icon, if not colors white. And now if we test it, we see that our icon color is changing whenever we click it. But we want also the list to appear or disappear. but we want that in an animation, and to do that we will need animation controller and animation offset. So to do that, let's create our animation controller and let's create our animation offset, and we will need two animation offsets. First offset will be created for our album cover and buttons, and second offset will be created for our radio list container. So let's create radio offset and let's create radio list offset as well. And we need to initialize our controller and our offsets. To do that, first of all, we need to add single peak provider statement sim to be able to initialize our animation controller. And our animation controller will be new instance of animation controller, and our sync will be this, and duration will be constant duration of let's say 500 milliseconds. Let's initialize our offset, which will be a twin. And for our beginning, we want to have our radio list to be hidden, so our offset in y axis will be 1. Therefore our radio list will be hidden, and for end our offset will be offset.0. Let's animate it with our curved animation, and for parent let's just add our animation controller, and for curve let it be curves.itOut, which will be nice, not linear animation. And let's do the same with our radio list offset, but at the beginning our album cover needs to be a little bit moved to the center, so the situation when our radio list is not shown, our default situation, but when our radio list is shown, then our offset needs to be in normal position, so it needs to be offset.0. So let's put offset to be, let's say, 0.3 in the y-axis. And apart from setting state, we need to animate. So basically we need to start our animation whenever we click it. So let's create a switch case based on our animation controller status, animation controller.status. So if animation status is dismissed, then we want to forward our animation in case our animation status is completed. Then we want our animation controller to go reverse. So we need to add a slide transition widget to our column at the beginning, and we need to assign our position, and for this it will be our radio offset, which we created for our album cover and buttons. And we need to assign line transition for our container as well, so for our radio list. So let's just wrap it with slide transition as well. And position will be our radio list offset. Let's just save it, let's just rerun it. And as you can see, it doesn't look quite good because I have mixed radio offset with radio list offset. It needs to be the opposite, needs to be changed. If we now just rerun it, we can see that our UI looks quite okay, and if we click our list to be shown, we can see that our radio list is shown. So now we will put our album cover whenever we change our radio station, and as default our first radio on the list will be the default one. So to start we need to add provider and shared preferences packages. So let's add provider, let's add shared preferences, so that our initial radio station that we have chosen last time will be loaded as first. And let's add providers folder. Let's create our radio provider, which will handle state of our selected radio station. Let's put it class radio provider with change notifier, and let's just create our initial radio station to be part of the constructor arguments. And let's create our radio station, which will be changeable, and of course at the beginning it can be null. And let's create our getter, which will be selected station. If it's null, then it will be initial radio station, And let's create a method that will change our radio station. So let's name it set radio station. As an argument it will be radio station. And now let's assign this station to our station and notify listeners. And let's create our shared preferences API. Let's name it shared prefs API. And let's create static future method which will return radio station, get initial radio station. Let's get our shared preferences object. Let's add our key that will hold the name of our station. Let's name it radio station. And now let's try to get station name, which will be shared prefs get string. The key will be our radio station key. And if our station name is null, then let's just return the first radio station from our radio stations list. If it's not null, then let's return first radio station that its name is the same as the station name from shared preferences. And we can assign that in our main function. We can add to my app constructor initial station argument, and we can load our initial station from shared preferences in main function and put it in instance of our my app. And we can register our provider as a parent of material app. Let's just add our multi-provider widget. Let's register our change notifier provider, and for create it will be context, and it will be our radio provider, and our initial radio station will be the one that we passed in constructor. Let's just rerun it to see that something is wrong, and this is because we forgot to put widgets Blender Find You Can Share initialized before trying to access any packages. Remember to do that always. And we can see that it's still working, but we need to assign our album cover to our container. So to do that, basically let's go to our radio player, and instead of putting our colors amber, let's just add colors transparent to our container, and as a child let's just add consumer, and that consumer will be listening to our radio provider changes. And as for builder, let's just return our image.network, and for value let's just add our station of provider, and it will be of course photo URL, and let's put it to be box cover. Just save it. And now we need to assign functionality, so whenever we click different list style, then our album cover needs to be changed. So we need to call our provider function that will notify all listeners, including our consumer, which will change our image of the provider station photo URL. So to do that, let's go to our radio list, and let's assign our onTap function, and our onTap function needs to call the provider function. But first of all, we need to get the provider. Of course, we don't need to listen to the changes of provider in this widget. So let's call it provider.setRadioStation, and it will be station, and just rerun it and open our list and click on BBC radio or different stations. We can see that it's working. However, whenever we change it and run the application, we can see that it's back to the first radio. This is because we didn't save our selected radio station to shared preferences. To do that, we need to add function that will do this thing. So let's just copy the get initial radio station function and change it to set station, and let's put set string of our key, and of course we need to add our station to be saved. So it will be our station name that will be stored in our set preferences as string. Of course, we don't need to return anything here. Just create void, and we don't need to assign this to our station name variable. So let's readjust our onTop function to have more than just one line. So we need to set radio station, but we need to also call our setStation function. So now if we select BBC radio and we run the application, we can see that still BBC radio is selected radio, so that's good. We can also highlight the selected radio from the list so that the user knows which radio is selected. To do that, we can put our list style in a container, and let's create a gradient as the highlighted row. So we need to put our decoration. Let's add the box decoration, and let's just add gradient to be linear gradient, and for colors let's put colors.pink and colors.purple. Let's do not change the direction. We can see that all rows are highlighted, but we want only one to be highlighted, so we need to check if our station is selected. And to do that, first of all, we need to assign a variable called isSelected in our item builder, and we need to check if a station from radio station's name is the same as the provider station name. So if it's selected, then we want the gradient. If it's not selected, then we basically do not need anything. Of course, it doesn't need to be constant box decoration. It needs to be constant linear gradient. And as you can see, it has changed, so BBC radio is the selected station. Of course, we have changed it to Radio Z, and in the UI we don't see the changes because our provider has only changed. But if we run the application, we can see that our Radio Z is selected one. This is because we need to also update the UI, so we'll create a stateful widget instead. And what we'll do, we'll create our radio station, selected station. Let's make it to be lazy loading. And for init state, well, what we can do, we can also assign the late radio provider here. Let's assign the provider in the init state, and let's assign our selected station to be the one that's in provider. However, whenever we click our list style, then we need to change the state and set the selected station to the station, and just save it. And now if we click BBC radio, then our highlight is changed as well to be on BBC radio. One thing that I don't like is that the text is black. It should be white to have a better contrast. To do that, let's just change the text widget of a title to have a style, and let's make it text style. And for color, it needs to be dependent of is selected black if it's true, and our color be colors.white. If not, then it's of course black. Maybe let's also make the selected radio to be bold weight. So the same, if it's selected, then it will be font weight .bold. If it's not, then font weight .normal. Yeah, it looks quite good. Just test it. Yeah, it looks quite nice. So now we will basically implement the most important feature, which will be basically to play the radio, to play the stream, link URL, and for that we'll need radio player package, and of course we need to install it to our project. So let's just do that now. Let's just add the radio player package. It's added, so let's create our radio API, which will use that package, radio API class, and let's make our radio player. It will be of course from package radio player, not our own widget. We need to initialize our player. Let's add our build context as an argument because we need to get access to our radio provider. Of course, we don't need to listen to it. And let's initialize our player to the new instance of our player. Let's just stop it to be sure. Let's adjust our channel, so our station. So it will be set channel. Our title will be provider station name, and URL will be providers station stream URL. Let's just play it. Of course, let's await before it stops. And we need to initialize our player, and I think the best place to do that is in our home screen, and use Future Builder for that. So let's wrap our radio player with Future Builder, and for Future, let's just put our initialize function for our radio API. Of course, our function needs to be static so that it can be used without initializing radio API, and our scaffold shouldn't be constant anymore. So for builder will be context and snapshot. And first of all, let's check if our snapshot connection state is still waiting. If it's still waiting, then it means that our player has not been initialized yet. Therefore, we can return constant center widget, and as a child, let's put our circular progress indicator, and let's put white color for this icon. Just put constant to our player, and we run. Now we can add new flag. Let's call it is playing, which will determine whenever the radio is playing. For now, let's just put to true, and we set that to true because our radio API starts to play the selected initial channel or station. And if it's playing, then we need to change our icon. So if it's playing, then our icons will be top icon. And let's change our onPressed function. So whenever our radio is playing, then we want our player to be stopped. And if it's not playing, then we want our radio API player to be played. And we can also, in init state, listen to our radio state changes of our package. So let's refer to our player. Let's listen to our state stream. So whenever the event is true, therefore it means that the radio player is playing. So let's just assign is playing to the event. We can see that for our requirements of our radio player package, we need to have Android AP level 23, so we need to update our build.gradle file in our project. So let's find it first of all, and let's change min SDK version to be 23. And now let's just run our application again. And when I run it, we can hear the radio. I hope you can hear it. So if we change our station, of course, nothing will happen because we haven't updated the station of our radio player. So let's just do that, but before that, I'll just mute it so that you can hear something. So we need to adjust something to our list type click function apart from changing shared preferences and provider. And to do that, let's just add extra function to our radio API, and let's name it change station. Of course, we need here the radio station. We don't need to initialize the player anymore because we have initialized it firstly. So now we need to basically stop the player, assign the station, from the station stream URL, and play it again. And we need to assign that function to our radio list. And before changing the station in a state in the UI, await our radio API change station to be station, the new one. So just run the application and open our radio stations. We need to unmute.
końcu trasy, to
We can hear the radio
miał
station,
jeszcze 2
and now
km do...
BBC radio. We can hear that the music has changed. Let's just change it to, let's say, Techno FM. And we can hear the fantastic techno music. I was joking. We can mute for now. So as you can see, I have muted the volume by muting the volume by the emulator button, of course, but we want to have the functionality of our volume muting assigned to our button. And to do that, we need to add our volume controller package. And this volume controller package can be also added from pub.dev packages site. And there are some functions that we can use. So first of all, let's just install the package. The volume controller has been resolved. So we can add the volume controller by lazy loading. Of course, we need to initialize it. So volume controller is new volume controller. And whenever we click our volume up button, then first of all, we need to also add a flag called is muted. By default, it's not muted, but we need to change our icon to be dependent on our flag. So if it's mute, then our icons is volume off icon. If it's not muted, then it's volume up. And I have just saw one bug because our unpressed volume button is stopping and playing our radio player, and that needs to be basically moved to our play stop button. Then just move it here instead of stopping and playing the player. First of all, we check if we are muted. So if our device is muted, then we want to unmute it. Therefore, we reset the volume and let it be 50% of our volume. If it's not muted, then let's mute our volume, and let's change the state of our muted flag to be the opposite. Let's save it. Let's just rerun the whole application. Now the application is up and running again, so let's mute it. We can see that it works. Let's just put the volume on again. You can see that it's putting 50%. Let's just stop it. You can see that it stopped. Let's just play again. And we can see that it's playing again. Let's change the station. Let's stop it. Let's play it again. Let's mute it. Unmute it again. As we can see, the app is working. So yeah, that's the simple radio station app that you can create. Of course, you can update this app by adding more stations or more functionality, like searching the radio station, for example, or having the radio list on server so that you just update the database with your radio list instead of updating the whole app to resync it every time you need to update your radio list station. If you like this video, then give a thumb and subscribe to my channel, and also you can follow me on my social media on TikTok and Instagram. It's pakman developer. For today it's all. See you next time. Who is the best?